Welcome to the VIP Financial Education YouTube channel where we help you go further, faster financially. And we now do that individually on a one-on-one basis. You are welcome to get in touch with me personally to evaluate your scenario, your short-term, your long-term objectives, and just sort of pick apart exactly what you're hoping to accomplish and try to put the various ingredients to your puzzle into a recipe that tastes great, right? We're looking to get further ahead. And sometimes that requires an extra set of eyes from somebody that's been evaluating other people's circumstances for a long time. I've been doing this now for almost 20 years. So I happen to offer input from time to time that can help people advance while also utilizing the banking system and their various products and programs to your advantage, where you can appropriately accelerate in building wealth and new income streams. You can attack and eliminate your debts much more quickly. You can build your credit scores faster, and you can put yourself in a position to absorb the pitfalls of a volatile economy. Today, we've got a caller that will be joining me here on video shortly. In order to claim your complimentary one-on-one conversation, visit the link in the description or go to freecoachingcalendar.com and go ahead and select the free coaching session there.
Let me just sort of start off by getting to know you a little bit. So tell me a little more about your life at home. Are you married? Do you have children? Are you supporting just yourself?
Married, two kids. My daughter is 16, son is 9. Been married now for, I don't know how many years, 12, 13 years, somewhere in there. I lose count,
Okay.
but a little while. I started in my DJ company back about 20 years ago, and that's kind of how I built up the funds. I've kind of taken, my intention has been to take all my excess funds and kind of funnel them into real estate for more long-term sustainability. And now I've built up a portfolio. I've got 8 rentals, and then I'd have a 9th under contract. But I kind of need some guidance here because I went to a Robert Kiyosaki free event about 12 years ago, and it turned me completely off from coaching. I haven't ever done another coaching call because I went head first into a sell-a-thon, and they made you feel like an idiot. And the guy up there's a god and everybody else is peasants. And so ever since then, I haven't done any kind of coaching. So this is kind of the first. It's scary for me too, because I'm scared of sell-a-thons. Hey, sell. So Kiyosaki ruined it for everybody else. But I've got another semi-coach / friend / coworker that kind of helps me navigate deals, and he's kind of a broker because I took most of my properties and converted them all to a investor type portfolio product, because on paper, with my companies and my business, I'm not going to qualify for your traditional loan. So I need more of an investor product. So I'm paying a few extra points. The cash flow is not great on these houses, maybe on average $350, $400 per house.
Okay. What would you say the average price tag is right now on each of those?
I would say the average home is in the 175 to 200 range.
Okay.
Per house.
When did you pick up the first of those rentals?
I picked up the first as my first move-in home when I was, buying my first house. We lived there from 06, maybe 8 years. And then once we were having our baby, I made the decision that I could either sell the house and pull my equity out. I maybe had 50 grand, or I can just start renting it out. And I read maybe 40 books. And then I went through hundreds of different, bigger pockets stuff, and just kind of self-educated myself. And so I just took my first house, converted over to a rental property to help pay the note on this bigger house that I'm in now. And that was kind of my goal was, I can make $300-400 profit on this house, leverage it to help me pay the mortgage on this newer house. And so that was kind of what got the ball rolling. And I realized, hold on, you can actually duplicate that and do that a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And so now I've just been steadily just trying to pick up, 1 or 2 houses a year. And then last year I picked up several houses. I think I picked up 4 houses last year, and then this year I just picked up 1. And the one was such a huge project that it just kind of lost money, and it got dragged through the mud several months longer than it should have. Like, I'm sure we've all been there. But so now I've got another one under contract at the moment that I'm trying to get close, hopefully this year or early next year.
Okay. So your goal, tell me a little bit about what it is you're hoping to get out of this call.
just guidance, just next steps. What's the best move to make now? I don't feel like the strategy that I have now in this new environment makes as much sense as it did 6 months ago, because the interest rates have gone up and driven down the cash flow down to where new strategies make more sense. Like I know assuming loans makes way more sense than doing what I have been doing, which is putting 25% down and just get the slow but steady. So now it's just time to figure out some kind of. I've never really had a plan. I just kind of picked up houses slowly. I've never really had an exit plan, and my strategy is to hold on to them for life. So it makes sense to get more of a roadmap and start to be more systematic now that I've got a portfolio. I mean, I don't have any LLC or anything like that, so it just makes sense to get a roadmap in place and just start being smarter about it now that I've got a sizable portfolio.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I would say first impression, some structure would certainly benefit you. There is enough here to where any misstep could cost you a lot, and there's probably some leakage that you could avoid already. Anytime you have this exposure, liability becomes a concern. You've got a lot of tenants running around, and last thing you need is somebody to trip and fall and hurt themselves and come after you for everything. So I definitely like that game plan for you to start putting some framework to this and really digging further into what you might be able to shore up a bit. What is your process for tracking everything? Do you follow any type of resource that you're using? Are you QuickBooks guy? Do you rely on Mint? Are you using every dollar? Have you looked at the cash flow cruncher? What tools do you use to pay attention to the money?
I just have a Excel spreadsheet that just has my homes itemized, what they're worth, what I owe, what they rent, and what they cash flow.
Okay.
So it's just kind of a little spreadsheet that I put together that I'll update occasionally. So as a home goes up or down, I try to keep on track to where I'm at. But nothing,
Okay.
It's just a little spreadsheet. That's it.
What about a monthly budget for the household? Are you doing anything with that, or are you just sort of keeping tabs on the bank accounts?
I have everything for basically one account, and I'll just take maybe 100 to 200, depending how my cash flow is personally going, and just put it into a capex account that is just set aside for ACs going out, just your taxes. But now that everything's kind of escrowed all, and I've gotten everything refinanced, I'm only paying taxes on one of my homes outright. The rest of them are all escrowed and bundled in with the loan. But
Okay.
I don't really track it in a systematic way. I just kind of put as much as I possibly can in the capex, or as much as I feel like putting in the capex when someone pays the rent.
Okay. Have you ever run in any cash flow pinch with the properties, not so much the household, but as far as the portfolio itself, with sort of a windfall of repairs that may be necessary? Have there ever been any challenges covering based on the reserves that you keep on the side, or does it pretty well self-fund?
Well, I'm running into that actually right now because I just had an AC unexpectedly go out, and then I just had some big repairs. So I'm having to pull from other accounts. But I'm kind of a paranoid kind of investor. Like I have accounts that are fully loaded, so that way if stuff happens, I can just move money around pretty easy. I stay a little too cash heavy. That's another issue I have, is I have too much cash that is not being used and put to work, if that kind of makes sense. So
I think that there's an interesting discussion surrounding that. Others may disagree with you. I'm personally somebody that doesn't like money sitting idly. I would rather the money work for me. But with the caveat that there has to be some emergency fund available that I can tap into, a liquid type of capital account. It doesn't need to be a checking and savings per se. It just needs to be a place that I can draw money from. So if I can keep all my money working for me and use some of these various tools that we talk about on our channel, that would be my personal preference. Let's talk about your income. So you mentioned a DJ business. Are you DJing events?
Yes, I run a entertainment company that we do DJ shows, weddings, corporate events, birthday parties. We run DJ, photo booth, lighting, larger events, smaller events, and I have a team of DJs that I send out as contractors. So they'll go do shows. So we can handle up to maybe 7 shows. And I just came off company party season. So now it's kind of relax, chill a little bit, because that's just, very crazy. These 3 weekends of, parties almost every night. And that's kind of been my bread and butter for many years. I also have a background in digital marketing. So that's what this is the last year full time that I think I've completely stopped doing digital marketing stuff. I've worked for Gannett, Houston Chronicle, stuff like that. So I've got a background in digital marketing, advertising, pay-per-click, anything digital marketing, websites, all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
and
cool.
Now I went full time with the DJ company, I guess this year, 2021.
Wow, congrats. That's awesome. You're bringing up some flashbacks for me, and they're not all good. Back when I was in college, this was shortly before I became an entrepreneur. I tried my hand at everything, and I actually got a job working for a DJ company. I would have been like one of your guys, right? And I shadowed for about 5 gigs, and it was the very first wedding of my own. And I go and I pick up the equipment from the storage, and I show up to the event, and I'm plugging in the equipment, and I noticed that one of the prongs was broken on the mixer. I couldn't get a hold of my boss. I was frantic. I run home and I grab at the time my 3-disc CD changer, because this was back, in 1998 or something. And I end up having to do the show, the entire wedding. The reception was done with the microphone up to the speaker of my 3-disc changer. Every request required that 30-second eject button, where it slowly comes out, and I pop the CD in and it slowly reloads. The wedding cleared out before, it must have been about 8:45 when everybody was gone. There was like 5 drunk people that stuck around until, closing time. And the bride was in tears. She told me I ruined her wedding. She's begging for a refund. It was the worst night of my life. I never went back.
I can imagine the trauma.
Oh my God. I mean, the fact that you're sitting here telling me about this is bringing up a lot of terrible memories for me. So
man, I go out with a backup laptop, and another backup laptop. The only thing that's going to take me down, I've got so much redundancy, is power outage. That's the only thing that'll get me.
Man, you just need to get that. Just got to bring that generator now. You'll be set.
I'm telling you.
No lights. Well,
I wake up having nightmares about what you did about.
I'm starting to sweat thinking about it. It's, that was an uncomfortable night, but those 5 drunk people that stuck around had a blast. So that's the only thing I can hang my hat on. All right. So, give me an estimated household income from the business this year. Since this is your first year through, what do you anticipate you're going to pull in as an adjusted gross? This would be a revenue to you pre-tax, after you've paid for all of your expenses, your guys, any new equipment purchases and so forth. What would be an adjusted gross that you can expect to pull out of the business?
My record keeping is so bad, it's hard to give you an actual figure, because I just kind of commingle the funds.
Mm-hmm.
I just always have, and I've known I need to do something about it. I just never have. But I just keep receipts and do taxes. But it's hard to say.
Let's start in the hundreds. Let's just kind of see if we can't land on a real ballpark number. 100K, 200K, 300K. Do you have an estimate to the nearest 100?
We'll say maybe 100. Let's say 100 take home after expenses. But
and any other income streams beyond the real estate, the DJing business? You're not doing digital marketing any longer. What about your significant other? You said you're married. What does your spouse do?
Yeah, she works in the insurance industry. Salary 65, 70-ish, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
Keeps us stable, because my cash flow is crazy, man. It's
right.
30 grand
busy
one
season
month,
now.
300 the next month. Yeah. It's just so bizarre, so up and down. I mean, it's more stable now, but it's still. That's always been a psychological thing for me, is that I can never have any kind of stability, because I never know what my income is going to be, because I'm at the mercy of the phone ringing.
Are you doing much marketing for your business, or is it all word of mouth, repeat customers? How are you generally attracting new business to the DJing side?
I don't do as much as I used to. I've gotten to where I get most of my stuff referral based from planners, coordinators, banquet halls, but I do a small amount of marketing, maybe, 12, 15 grand a year. I'm guessing, before I look at all the numbers on like Google ads, Facebook ads, and just, I'll sponsor certain events.
Got
But
it.
most of it's pretty much word of mouth at this point.
Okay. And as far as shorter term goals, is it your priority then to just continue to build the DJing business? Tell me a little bit about, if I could help you the most, what would it be to help you do?
Less DJing, more real estate. Because over time, I want to do. Because right now I'm doing too many shows to where it's not fun. It's when you're doing 4 shows in a week, it's just taxing. It's emotionally draining. But if I'm doing 1 show a week, I'm having a good time. I'm able to put all my energy into it versus, because a 4-hour DJ show is a 12-hour day. Set up, tear down, drive, load in, load out, and then it's mentally taxing too. A 4-hour DJ show is as mentally taxing as 8 to 12 hours of a normal job. You have to be so laser focused. So my job is more real estate income, more cash flow, so that way I can slowly transition over time, to being DJ heavy income and just get my real estate cash flow up to where I just DJ when I want to, and then I'm subbing more things out. Because that's what I ran into this year. I say the same thing every year. I'm gonna stop doing so many shows because it's just so taxing. And then when it comes down to it, I'm like, do I want to sub this out and pay somebody $1,000 when I can just grab my helper and we just go knock it out ourselves and everybody's gonna be happy? So my goal next year is to actually live up to that and not just go do the show every time.
Okay.
That's the mentality.
And when you say you want to be more real estate, less DJing, have you considered diversifying inside the real estate space into other things beyond just the long-term buy and hold aspect of it?
I've considered some short-term rentals, and it's just something that I've never really pulled the trigger on. I've considered a beach house, but I've just never pulled the trigger on it because I've kind of stayed with the tried and true method. But I also realized that, because I had an initial goal to get 10 rental houses, and then I was going to use that as my kind of base, my life base pay, as you will. And then once I got to my 10, then I was going to start to do other stuff. But now that I'm already at 8 and 9, I'm already kind of ready to get more cash flow and generate more cash flow.
I think that's been the problem with the formula, in my opinion, as I've been surrounded by real estate now for a couple decades. I sat back and just sort of adopted this principle that if you just buy these long-term properties, you hold on to them, you rent them to good tenants, you're making this passive cash flow every month. Over time, you could create a road to wealth. And what I began uncovering was the fact that the money would essentially run out before I could acquire enough properties to make a big enough dent to move the needle. And if you're just doing very simple math, you can compute this on your own, right? Let's assume that you're going forward on $200,000 properties. We're going to use that number just to keep it close to where yours are at. I think it's harder and harder to find that price point nationwide, but in your area, it sounds like it's still probable, which is great. And let's say that you've got to come up with a 20% down payment on each property that you acquire. You're now at $40,000 out of pocket before you've covered your closing costs as well. You're now at 2 to 3% in closing costs. I'm going to stay as conservative as I possibly can in this just hypothetical example. 2% would be another $4,000. So you're at $44K per property. If you're hitting home runs on these properties, or let's call them triples, and you're making $500 a month in positive cash flow, which seems to be on the high side from where you're realizing now, again, a conservative number, and even a less realistic conservative number based on the higher interest rates that we've been seeing today too. If you're averaging $500 per, it's going to take another 10 doors just to get another $5K per month in your back pocket, right? 10 doors requires $440,000 out of pocket, plus another $1.6 million worth of debt for your first mortgages, right? $160,000 mortgages on each one times 10. So to me, the average household is going to struggle to come up with numbers that make a big enough difference. Most people that I talk to, it seems like that $10,000 per month number is sort of an easy round figure to target first and foremost before you start to work up from there. So based on these numbers here, you'd have to double what I just did, right? So not 1.6 million in debt, you're at 3.2 million in debt. Not $440,000 worth of out-of-pocket costs for the down payment and closing. You're at $900,000. That's to get you to $10,000, and that's if they're each cash flowing $500 a month, which I think is unrealistically optimistic right now. So for me, long-term buy and hold real estate eventually became something that I categorically would consider to be a long-term net worth driver.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a solution to building that maybe eventual retirement plan or a legacy that you can leave behind to the children. But it's not an easy way to transition from that, call it a 9 to 5, just the proverbial 9 to 5, into this sort of passive retirement that we have, visions of in our minds. And that required me then to start saying, well, where else within the real estate world, which I'm obviously passionate about, could I potentially uncover these shorter term cash flow solutions? Because it eventually just wasn't the long-term buy and hold real estate game that was going to get me there. I've so seldom met people where they're, sailing Greece on some chartered, catamaran and saying, thank God for my rental. That's what got afforded this trip. Most of us are scratching our heads half the time saying, what the F is this actually making me more broke than it is making me rich? Because we run into these sort of, time periods where things build up or snowball, and you've got, a couple AC units out at the same time, and then a roof needs to be replaced. And the more properties you acquire, the more problems you have. And all it takes is 5 or 6 issues at the same exact time to really cause a problem. And so that's why I asked the question, is whether or not there is a possible interest in exploring other directions inside real estate, because I think long-term buy and hold is great, but I don't think you're going to necessarily get what you're looking for if your answer to my question is, what are you hoping to accomplish, is passive cash flow. It's just not a cash flow solution, long-term net worth. And you've probably done pretty well since you've been buying these from the equity standpoint.
Yeah, it's done. It's done what it's done. I've got some pretty good equity, and I've generated a little bit of cash flow. Enough to it saved my butt during COVID when the DJ company went in the tank.
Oh,
having these little $3-4 grand a month real estate income really helped out a lot with that.
Good.
But
So it's been a good supplement for you, but you can't necessarily live on it yet.
And even this house that I have under contract, the numbers are worse than what you're saying. Mm-hmm. It's almost a deal that I don't really even want to do, but I still want to continue to move forward because I think I'm closer to 65 grand down. It's a $195,000 house, and it might cash flow 400. So I'm going to have way too much cash in this last house, and then it's going to put me at my about the point where I'm losing my comfort level with having too much cash. Now I'm at probably where I need to be cash flow wise, or not cash flow, but I'm where I need to be as far as the amount that's in the bank for stability purposes to manage everything if 5 ACs go out. So now it's hampering my ability to continue to invest by putting all this money into this 9th house, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Having to make some moves and shore up, free up some more cash.
I've just always been somebody that's been convinced that $65,000 can do a lot more for me than $400 a month,
Yeah.
And so I sort of put that intention out there, and I search for it, and it's not always an easy hunt, but the thing, stuff comes up. Perfect example, case in point, 2 years ago this month, happened to have a conversation with a good buddy of mine. He he received a cease and desist from the state of Colorado for plumbing without a license. And one of his competitors had turned him in. And he was desperate, to say the least. He had a wife and 2 children. At this point, all income was essentially shut off. And for 6 months, I had been having conversations with him about his credit because he was wanting to borrow money in order to afford equipment that he could go out and get into the drain business inside the plumbing world. And he wasn't there yet. And I said, what would it look like if we were to partner up? What if I showed up with the money? He obviously was really grateful for the idea. His eyes perked up. I was willing to ask for 35%. He offered 50. So with a $50,000 investment, we agreed that a $40,000 portion of that would become a promissory note to the business, this new business we were forming together. It was a brand new company. And the business would pay back the 40, meaning my initial capital investment was going to be 10K. I would come in with some of the basic knowledge that you would bring to the table, for instance, like brand development, getting a logo created, getting some of the fundamentals like a business card and shirts made, getting the Facebook account set up, getting the entity established and the bank accounts done, all the basic administrative stuff that needed to happen for the first several months. And I committed a considerable amount of time for the first couple months, right? From December till February, when we began taking jobs. And this was finding the right software service. I've never worked in a trade service. This was a brand new industry for me. In fact, if you would have told me 2.5 years ago, I'd be in the number 2 business, I would have laughed at you. It was ridiculous to me. Okay. But here I am. We buy the equipment. I secure all of it to my name. So I'm collateralized to it, meaning if anything happens and we have to sell, I'm the one that gets that money. We create a partnership agreement. We do it all formally. The first year in business, we do $165,000, of which about 70 was mine. That's after all of our expenses. That's on 50K. 40 of that 1,000 is also getting repaid by the business, right? So technically speaking, out of the 10 that I capitalized with, I'm receiving about a 700% return on my investment. This is why I start to challenge real estate as sort of my end all be all, because that's my baseline, because that's really where I started my career, was in real estate. My mind always starts there. But when I can start there and then begin to make simple comparisons, it's easy for me to see that there are potentially other places that this money can be used. The same amount of money that it would have taken me to go out and buy a $200,000 house, 40K down plus 10K in closing costs and some basic repairs, is now able to get me a $70,000 ROI on my first year. And the second year that we're now wrapping that today, well, not actually, it could be very close to today. I don't know exactly when the anniversary date is going to be double the revenue. We're just shy of double. And our goal now is to go out and 10X this thing by next year. So we bought a bunch of new equipment, spent $300,000 now, hired a bunch of guys. We're really taking it to a whole nother level. But it was kind of an experiment. I didn't know what to expect from it. There was some risk there. I hedged the risk, of course, and mitigated by just securing what I could as far as the equipment was concerned. But my challenge to you would, I think, be twofold. Number one, I think we can agree that there's probably a level of noticeable disorganization that, if sorted out, would serve you really well. I think you would be able to find tremendous value in spending the small handful of hours that it would take you to do it in getting everything laid out in front of you so that visually you had a better understanding of what your averages look like. Granted, because you're dealing with the inconsistencies of entrepreneurial revenues, it becomes this sort of excuse that a lot of us as business owners lean into to just not do it. Because we're like, well, I don't really know. I don't know what I'm going to make next month. Last month was less than this month, and next month could be less than last month. So I'm just not going to really put anything on paper. What you really want to do in order to sort of curb that, what I would consider to be kind of an overwhelming feeling that leads to the excuse, is base everything on averages. Okay. Take the last 12 months, especially since you just entered into your first full-time year of doing this, and just break it into, your best and worst months all put together. And here's what your average income was for the month. This would also mean just using some really simple tools. I've found that Mint can be a little bit congested when you're using it for business and blending it with your personal logins. Mint.com is a free resource that Intuit, that owns QuickBooks and Quicken, provides. So I'm not sure that's going to be the best resource for you. You may want to make an investment, since you really are looking to at least keep this business. I'm assuming you're planning to sustain the business, correct? At least until you don't have to anymore.
Yeah. I don't want to shut it down. I want to eventually get my son involved and keep it going.
So you just kind of want to automate it?
Continue to grow it. Just do less shows myself.
Got it. So you step back, have people that are doing it for you, and delegate a little bit more.
And then maybe when I'm 50, then I either retire it, sell it, structure. Right now, I couldn't even sell it because I'd have to fix up all the restructure, the restructuring of it, and yeah.
And I absolutely would be looking into an entity as well. I mean, having eyeballs on this is going to be a saving grace for you, because I think there is value. You've got a lot of ingredients you're working with. You got far more ingredients you're working with than even I can sort through without being able to have eyes on it myself, right? So as I'm sort of asking the questions, I'm getting a lot of information, but because you have so many moving pieces, it makes it very difficult for me to make specific strategies aside from saying, get it in front of you and get it organized, number one. Number two, I would really try to encourage you to demand more from your money. I know you're investing in what you know best. And you may have some critics that watch this video that say, man, you know, stay the course, keep buying these long-term buy and hold rental properties. I don't agree. I think blending long-term net worth investing with short-term net cash flow solutions, which is what you're really crying out for. When I say, what do you want? You're saying, I want more cash flow. And then use that cash flow to buy more real estate. I find buying the real estate is incredibly easier when you solve the short-term net cash flow equation. If you could find one more way of channeling that same money, which tends to be a lot more proactive, don't get me wrong, but I just want to make sure everybody listening is aware that this drain business that I invested in, while it took a lot of my time on the front end for the first couple of months, now only requires minimal attention each week because I'm just checking in with the team. So it's virtually daily. I would say about 5 days a week. I'm sending off some texts. I have a one weekly meeting, and then my business partner and I will call each other throughout the week a few times. Realistically speaking, today I'm probably investing about 5 hours a week on that business. So it is a little bit more proactive than it is passive. I personally call passive income, you know, progressive income, because progressively it should become a little easier and easier to step back. I don't personally think long-term buy and hold real estate is passive. I mean, you're dealing with an AC unit right now. You're dealing with a property that you've been researching, putting numbers to paper and deciding how to get through the lending process. You had to go through a portfolio refinance on these. You had to get creative with the financing initially because your business didn't necessarily support. So there's a lot of time and effort that's going into this portfolio. It is not passive. So I always like to try and get people to at least consider accurately what goes into being a long-term buy and hold real estate investor to begin with. But if we're able to sort of analyze this, and I hate to say it, but if I were an extra set of eyes or another brain on this decision, I would possibly, I don't know how far along you are in the process or what, what's at risk in terms of earnest money or when your closing is taking place. But, for me, if I'm sitting across from a guy that's telling me he's making, $6,000 a month as like clockwork, because every 2 weeks I'm taking $3,000 as a membership distribution from the business. And on top of that, we're taking bonuses because the numbers keep getting better. And I did that on 50K, of which 40 is also being repaid. And I'm about to spend 65,000 on a property that's looking like $400 a month. I'm sitting there saying, wait, hold on a second here. Maybe I should be.
I'm feeling that too.
Right. And that's okay.
Well, I like your setup a little better, actually.
Sure. I mean, and that's why I pointed out. And I think a lot of times people enter into that discussion think, oh, well, you must have come from this background. I had no experience whatsoever in the drain business. None. All I thought in the beginning was, let's go through some basic checkpoints to make sure that this is an industry that I can get behind. It's recession proof. It's pandemic proof. No one's going to tell anyone they can't call in an emergency guy to get their toilet to stop draining into their bathtub, right? It's robot proof. It's something that if you're quick about it and you're really good at what you're doing, you can kind of charge what's necessary to drive the profits you need, because people are willing to pay anything to make sure that bathtub doesn't have poo-poo in it. So there's a lot of things that I was like, very quickly within the first few minutes of thinking about this industry, as long as I'm not the guy down there getting it all over me, I'm interested, right? And that's what my partner did. And that was really, I think, the key variable in this was making sure I had a wonderful partnership. Because if you get the wrong person, can all unravel, as you know, right? So partnerships can be the best thing ever or the worst thing ever. And I just had a lot of faith in this guy going in. And I just loved him. I had developed a great friendship. So I really believed in him, and it's worked out fabulous so far. I really think it's going to be a $5 million business within the next 2 or 3 years. So with that being said, I think cause for pause here makes a lot of sense. So taking one step backwards, getting everything laid out in front of you so that you can make really, really more informed decisions about this. Keeping that portfolio, I think, is fabulous. You've got a wonderful starting point with respect to your long-term net worth side. You've got some supplemental net cash flow that's coming in. And like you said, during the pandemic, it helped you out a lot. But if you're really looking for that next level up, I think your money could be doing a lot more for you. Just 65 grand of a down payment on one property, making you 400 a month, could easily fund 3 arbitrage deals in the short-term rental business that are each making you $2,000 a month. So you'd have 6K on top of the 3 or 4 that you got from your current properties. There's your 10. And you're not responsible for a 30-year mortgage. You're not responsible for the AC when it goes out. You're not responsible for that roof replacement. If they no longer allow the short-term rental in that county or city, the partnership agreement is void. So that's another area in real estate that I would encourage you to explore. And that's another business that we started just a year ago, and it's going phenomenally well on our side for that. And we anticipate having about 12.5 doors by the end of this year, and by the end of January, closer to 25 or 30 doors that are already underway, are already in the pipeline. And that's basically just where we're being paid as managers. You know, it's property management. And if I'm splitting the profit, but I don't have to pay for the furniture or the decor and all the debt servicing, and all I'm doing is just managing the guests that are coming in. As a DJ and somebody that's been in the business as long as you, I can jump to the conclusion that you would be phenomenal in hospitality in general. And I manage, one of these doors in Colorado. Every day it takes me about 5 minutes. Property makes me $90,000 a year. I'm texting people earlier today, the guests that are coming in next week, just shooting them a note. Here's the stuff you need to know. It's all templated out at this point, been doing it for 3 years. So I just copy and paste texts, send them over to each guest. Follow-up texts go out to the previous guests, texts go to the cleaners, texts go to the handyman last week to go in and install a shower head. I haven't, I go back and forth from Colorado, I travel a lot for work. So a lot of times I'm not even in the state and it's being managed, no problem. So I just think that you have the skill set now to maybe spread this into other areas and do it capably, but realize a lot more profit for it in the shorter term. And then as you get that profit, if you have another 10K per month, every month coming in, how many more long-term rentals could you afford to buy over the next 5 years? 60 months of 10K is $600,000, that's 10 of these $65,000 or 9 of these $65,000 long-term rentals you're buying now. So I think it'll just give you a lot more affordability, keep the bank accounts more flush. And it's not to say don't buy rentals. It's to say maybe divert some of your attention temporarily into the short-term cash flow side. But I don't think the short-term cash flow solution is going to come from long-term rentals.
I'm definitely agreeing with you on that, 100%.
I definitely would be open to looking at all this stuff again if you're willing to take the time as a homework assignment as we sort of wrap the call to get everything on paper, and we can really sort of click around on some of the spreadsheets. The way I would encourage you to do it is fill out a cash flow cruncher for the household. So whatever you're taking into the home should be its own cash flow cruncher. Whatever you're taking into the DJing business should be a separate cash flow cruncher. And whatever the properties are doing should be its own financial ecosystem as well. So 3 separate cash flow crunchers will make it the easiest to fill it out. It'll get confusing if you try and mush it all into one. Okay. So treat them as separate ecosystems. And ultimately, that's what you're going to want to do to structure these businesses anyway. You're going to want your household to stand alone. You don't want somebody that has an idiot DJ like me come in and screw up her wedding to sue me and has access to my house and all this stuff, or a tenant over here fall and hurt themselves and have access to my personal assets, my primary residence where my family lives. So you want to have that broken into an entity where your properties are, right? Or multiple entities. And you're going to want to have an entity for the DJ business. So start with those as cash flow crunchers. I'm not saying rush out and set up those entities yet. What I'm saying is, as you fill out the spreadsheets, it should be fairly easy for you. You'll have the data, even just looking at your bank accounts or looking at the spreadsheets that you have for your properties now, you'll be able to just input the figures. It's income, expenses, debts, and then ultimately it'll create a summary page for you to break down what your net cash flow is, but just base everything on averages.
Okay.
Anything that's inconsistent, anything that's inconsistent, like vehicle registrations, you'll average that monthly, right? So if it's $600 a year for the registration, it's $50 a month average.
Gotcha. This is helpful. I mean, it's like, I've had this whole stuff. Where do you start? This kind of gives me at least I can go
starting
somewhere.
Point. And it might take you a couple hours to get done, but it'll be such an eye-opening couple hours. I'm telling you, the time you commit to what we're talking about now it'll prove to be, on a dollars per hour basis, some of the most valuable time you can invest. You'll come away with it with a lot more kind of an open perspective and awareness. And you can't change anything and create a roadmap unless we have the awareness to begin with.
Is that Cruncher on your website?
Yeah, just go to cashflowcruncher.com. It's free to everybody that watches the channel. No strings attached. As far as our coaching is concerned, I know that you'd mentioned something when you were talking about Kiyosaki. One thing I want everybody listening to know is we'll never hard sell you into coaching. We only accept into our coaching 5 coaching members a month. There's more demand than supply. I offer in our coaching what they call a can't lose coaching guarantee, which means if somebody's unhappy after an entire year of working with them and they say, I don't think that was worth the money I spent, I'm going to make them whole for the difference. I'm going to say, what was it worth? And if they think it was $2,000 or $3,000 less than what they paid, I'm going to refund them the difference all the way up to 100%. So I just want to address that for anybody listening that maybe looks into our coaching. I will be assessing firsthand personally whether or not anybody is a fit before we actually give the green light that they can move forward. They sign up, they pay, they fill out the forms, and then they're on an assessment call that's essentially a pre-qualification. If during that call, either side says, this isn't a match, I just don't like the way you look today, or I don't like the way you sound, it's all audio. So, if I don't like the tone of your voice, great. Membership is voided. We refund 100% of the tuition. So we don't play these games where we have this intense volume that we're trying to create, because it's all one-on-one. It's like a dentist's office. It's one person per chair. We don't have workshops. We don't have courses. I don't sell something electronic that I need, I can sell 1,000 of them. It's 5 per month capacity, and it's the least profitable business that I have. So I just want to throw that out there in response to your Kiyosaki side, because I hate that as a consumer too. I hate being hard sold. If anything, I'm going to be disqualifying somebody long before I'd be qualifying them. So at no time do I anticipate this heading in that direction unless it's something that I really think you desperately need. If you are a growth-minded person, that's something that I certainly recommend. It doesn't have to be with us. It should just be somebody. You need to find somebody that you have confidence in, that you can feel will be contributing positively to only your best interests to help get out of your own way. Because I think your weaknesses are going to perpetually be your weaknesses, as are mine. And we don't necessarily have the same weaknesses. So if I can compensate for yours in order to help with these minuscule little things that you probably in some cases already even know, right? I mean, if I go to my doctor I already know my doctor would tell me to stop vaping. Pretty simple. We know some of these things. So sometimes we just need the accountability in order to get a plan to move forward. So what I'm going to do is I have no intention of selling you anything, but I will be happy to bring you back on here. Let's go over some of the numbers together. I'd love to see you do that sooner than later. So I am going to try and pressure you to make this a priority. I know that we're coming up into the holiday stuff. It's chaotic, but I also know that we end up finding ourselves with more time than we usually do too, even though it feels like a whirlwind. A lot of times we're just kind of dinking around. And this is also because I see the YouTube view numbers too. And I see people, we're consuming a lot more content this time of year too. So during those times where we're sort of just lounging and putting on weight, I would recommend sit down, get your numbers in order. You can ping me through the text that I sent you earlier. You've got my direct number. Say, listen, I'm ready. I got everything I think. And let's just sort of work through it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. Just try to make it realistically conservative on your averages. Realistically conservative, not realistically optimistic. Try to get it as close to the perfect number as you can, but just know that there's no such thing as a perfect cash flow cruncher. It doesn't exist, and it's fluid. It will always be changing. So get it as close as you can to what you think most surprises are in your favor, and not, you're just sort of looking at it and trying to paint it with a kind of a rose-colored paintbrush. But from there, we can start to really direct some of this game planning. And I would really take a hard look at what your options are on this property too. And I think that would be the one thing I would encourage you to maybe pause if you can. I'm convinced that we're heading into a market that's probably going to force sellers to be a little bit more flexible. I don't think we've seen the end of this rocky road that we've been sort of sitting on recently. And I think it's going to get a lot more volatile. I think the debt loads are up, and I think it's going to end up posing an issue to where you might see prices improve as time goes on. And with the inflation numbers, looking better over the last couple of months, rates might come down further, and you might find a better deal than the one you're entering into. But $50K for $6K a month versus $65K for $400 a month. Plus, you're going to have a loan too. My $50K didn't come. My $50K was a loan, by the way. I used a debt weapon. I borrowed money to make the investment. So the $50K that I then turned into I forwarded the promissory note onto the business, wasn't even my money to begin with. So it's something that you can't do in real estate, is borrow money to get in for the deposit. The down payment has to be typically your own money, and it has to be seasoned if we're going conventional. So a lot of flexibility looking to alternative ways of generating revenue. And sometimes it just requires patience. That's all. Because these things are not, it's not like a drain business was sitting in front of my face. It sort of came up, and we just have to be ready for it and kind of open-minded to it.
Sure. I'm on board. That's one of the reasons I pulled the trigger on this house, is I'm kind of waiting for something to present itself, and it just kind of has something like, I've got to move forward. I've got to always be moving forward. So, but it's worthy of consideration to look into this house if it's the best investment at the time, because I kind of agree with you. I think a better one is probably right down the road. Much better one. Better way to invest 65.
Sometimes patience is the best proactivity. Even though it feels like you're just sitting there not doing anything, right? It's like, oh man, I need to be doing something. Got this money, I should be investing it. Sometimes the patience is, it's an aggressive form of proactivity, because it's like eating at you constantly. Like, oh man, I'm not doing anything.
That's the lesson of the stream right there. Sometimes.
It's hard for me too. I mean, I think you and I probably have a similar, self-diagnosed case of ADHD, and, we're just like,
move forward.
Perpetual pursuit of progress, right? Maybe it's perpetual pursuit of patience that will serve us the best in this type of economic environment. Anticipation is such a huge thing right now, because who knows what's coming? Can't you feel something?
Oh, yeah.
Can't you feel that something over the next 12 to 24 months could break out? And you're just sort of like trying to be at the bottom. But if you remember the last downturn in 2000, for us, it really hit in 2006. I had a property that dropped by 65% in 2006. So I'll be the one to argue that Colorado was one of the first in. But call it 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. You could have purchased at any time during those years and be sitting on, properties that did extremely well. You could have still been purchasing in 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, and still be sitting on properties that did very well. You're not going to miss it. But I think you can still look back and say, oh my God, I got in too early, because I don't think we've seen the worst. I don't think it's shaken out. There's not nearly enough pain that's revealed itself yet. We haven't paid for all the mistakes we've been making for the last 10 years of people perpetually pursuing equity. What we do as consumers is we go out and spend money on our consumer related accounts like credit cards. We buy cars. Look at the car market. Look at how much non-mortgage related consumer debts are out there right now. And then we just refinance it through a home equity line of credit. And we have no credit card debt. Well, I'm out of debt. Well, no, you're not. You just rolled it into your home and then start racking up the credit cards again. And people have done this cycle again. I see it every day. So I don't think that people have paid for that yet. And I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. This is just my opinion. People obviously may have counterpoints to that. It's speculation, but the numbers don't look good. The cracks are showing. And the banks are even reacting. I was on the phone with a bank last week that was telling me that they're being extremely careful right now because they're seeing some very concerning information. So, who knows what's going to happen? But I think being safe is always good, and I think you can be safe and still be active. And it's not that I want you to sit back and do nothing. It's just that I think your 65K could actually make more for you. And it may require more work to do it, but if it makes 10 times the amount of money or 20 times the amount of money that the property would, are you willing to put in 10 or 20 times the amount of work that this property is taking you? And the answer is probably sure. Right.
Happily.
Exactly.
I'm essentially the guy that's just, I need somebody to push, go do that. Okay.
Right.
Go do it.
Right. Yeah.
No, instead of
and
all
I'm
these options over there, there's so many different ways we can go. But if I can just get a laser focus, okay, do that. And then that is helpful.
And sometimes it's, you're still going to have to be the guy that's out there hunting, right? It's not like the guys that I rely on for mentorship and guidance were the ones that said, dude, get into the drain business, man. Got to get into the drain business. No, the drain business showed up. I'm like, never really thought of that, but sure seems savvy in a lot of ways. And it seems like it can make great money. So I did my own research and then I went to them with it. Hey, what do you guys think of this drain business idea, right? And then I try to get their feedback. So it's not so much somebody that I'm counting on to compose my life for me.
Of course.
It's I'm getting people with the checks and balances so that as I'm looking into things, I'm just making sure I'm not overlooking something and making a dumb mistake, right? And so I guess that would be the other takeaway I would want you to get from this is just don't be so hyper-focused on the long-term buy and hold real estate that you become comfortable with to think that that's the only direction that you have to continue to explore. And I think that could be a little bit of a roadblock for you is that you're a bit blinded, that maybe there have been other opportunities that have been near you and you didn't necessarily even, pick it apart a little bit more or ask a couple more questions about it because you were, dead set on, well, I got this contract and I'm getting this, my 9th deal. And it's awesome, man. Real estate well. It's so rare that you encounter people that already have eight properties. You should be very proud of what you've accomplished already. And yet, you're sitting here saying it's not necessarily doing it. It's not letting me walk away if I needed to or wanted to from this other income stream. So that's why I always challenge it. I'm one of the
I'm set up long term, but I need to focus more short term. Long term is great, but short term is where I need more focus.
And maybe I wasn't looking in the right places. I don't want to bash the whole industry, but I kind of felt a little bamboozled after a while because it just seemed like I was tricked into thinking that long-term buy and hold real estate was the answer. And as I began to really just lay out silly examples like that in 3 minutes or less, the numbers didn't check out. And I'm like, why couldn't I just do this in my head when I was 22 years old, getting into real estate and falling in love with it, and realize right then and there that buying properties with a $500 net cash flow expectation is unaffordable to get me to a point where I can just kind of sit back and crack my knuckles and babysit them and do what I want the rest of the day. It's like, I don't know too many households that can do that. I do know people who've accomplished it, but it's literally still single digit. And I'm around a lot of real estate people, man. And it's like the average person sitting in a real estate investment association is broke. And there's maybe 1, 2, 3 guys in there that are killing it. I got buddies that are in the triple digits and indoors, but man, they work hard. Passive my ass.
Yeah,
so
that is true. I don't think passive actually exists, but
right. And I like to really count on language too. And that's one other recommendation I would have is like change your vocabulary to match reality too. Because when we try to plant seeds like that in our own minds, it's a little deceptive, even if it's just to ourselves, right? So that's why I started calling it progressive income, because it's more true. Everything I've ever done required a lot of front end work, a lot of front end research. I had to really dig in. I'm watching videos, I'm looking stuff up, I'm asking people. It took time and effort.
But that's also the most fun too.
I love it. Yeah. It's fun. It doesn't feel like work.
Time flies.
It does. I mean, we got to be doing something with our time. We're not going to just be sitting on the beam, staring out at the ocean, drinking, a couple days here and there throughout the year. But for the rest of your life, it's unrealistic. We want to be doing stuff we want to be doing, but we have to have the money to pay people to do the things that still need to be getting done. Like taxes, for example. I'll always have a great accountant because I hate taxes, but they have to be done. So I need to have enough money to afford an accountant. My properties are going to have to get cleaned. I got to have enough money to afford a cleaner if I don't want to be doing it. The lawn's got to get mowed. The list goes on, right? Oil needs to be changed. So the things I don't want to do, I got to be able to afford the delegation. The stuff I don't want to do that doesn't need to be done, I axe it. I just take it out of my life. It's non-existent. So everything I do, I want to be doing now. But it took time to get to that point because I couldn't afford somebody for everything initially. But I would just say there's a lot of options for you, brother. And I think you can stay in real estate if you want to and still get what I'm talking about as far as short-term net cash flow solutions that allow you to buy more of the long-term net worth investments, properties in your case, if you want them, other long-term investments if you care. And have a lot more money left over at the end of every month, which is sort of the name of the game. So get those numbers done for me. Let's get you back on here. We'll take a closer look and we'll go from there.
Sounds like a plan. I'll get that done.
Awesome, Forrest. Hey, man, it was cool meeting you, dude. I'm excited to see where this goes. You got a lot of cool things going on. So thanks for letting me be a part of it, dude.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
All right.
I'll work on those crunchers, man. I'll be in touch.
Let me know if you have questions.
Will do. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Forrest. Take care, buddy. Bye.
All righty, guys. So that was Forrest Crump. That's his real name, everybody. I couldn't believe it. I literally thought that we were being trolled as I first threw out these free coaching sessions. If you want to get a free coaching session and start talking about your goals and see if we can unpack ways for you to get ahead further, I'd be happy to do that with you. Just check the description below for the link to get signed up. There's no strings attached here. And if you enjoyed these videos, please drop a thumbs up for me. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already and share with your friends. Guys, this helps me so much. The algorithm really does react when you guys engage like that. So I want to put as much free content on here as I possibly can and not ask for something in return from you. But the only thing I do hope for is that you guys will take me up on that request to give me a big fat thumbs up on the video so that we can get the word out on this new series. How did we do it, right? The How Did We Do It series where we talk with you, our listeners, and see whether or not an additional set of eyes can help you go further, faster financially. We'll see you on the next video. Until then, make it a great day today and keep on cash flowing. Take care.